What's up guys, it's your boy Deadman, and this is a couple of different ways that I like to use OTT. I went ahead and brought in a bass sound that I made a while back. Let's take a listen to it without any additional effects. Yeah, sounds great. Something that you can drop into a tune right away, but something I like to do with samples both that I've made or even samples that I download or that I work with is I always like to try to like reverse the audio or chop it up in a different way to kind of like make it my own. But then I also like to do post-processing just to get like, see if I can get some different tones out of the sound, right? So I went ahead and added an OTT right here. Now let's go ahead and just activate the OTT and see how it sounds with just the standard preset, no changes. So immediately it's a little bit thicker, right? Kind of gives you, if you're familiar with like sausage fattener, saturation, it gives you some of that like thickness that you get from a saturation, but also like some bright top end. Awesome. So typically when I use like the standard OTT preset, what I'll also do is I will take an EQ and use that to chop off the low end of the sound so we get something like this. And one of the reasons I like to do this is just to make room for a sub, which I added this in just to kind of show you what it would sound like. Just so it gives you a little room to add in a sub and specify what you want that low end to sound like. Another way I like to use OTT is by adjusting the parameters of the actual plugin here. So adjusting the parameters on these brown bars. Now, you can adjust these individually by clicking and scrolling up or down, as well as the green bars here on the left. But what I like to do is hold down the command button and then click and drag, because that affects actually all three of these parameters. And they'll all open up at the same time. So if I click command and drag this up till about like right here-ish, then it gives you a little bit of a different sound. So let's take a listen to that. So for me, I tend to call that my like open OTT setting. It still gives you some of that like heavy OTT compression that you get with the standard preset, but it actually, I feel like, opens up the sound a little bit more, gives you some clarity and some loudness. This is something I use a lot, honestly. I'm pretty sure when you make these adjustments, it is behaving kind of like the standard multiband dynamics preset. However, for me, I like the way it sounds like this. Now, another thing that a lot of people like to do is actually just play with the amount knob here. So if we just have the regular OTT, just bringing that down even to just 50 will give you some different tones, or bring it down a little bit lower. Maybe you just want to add like a little bit of bite and punch to your sound. That's another way to use the OTT here, is just bring the amount down. Let's do a comparison, right? You still get some of that bite, but it's just mixing the two signals of the fully wet signal of going through the OTT as well as the regular signal of your sound. Something else that you can do with OTT is actually mess with the time. Man, a lot of people do not play with this setting, but it can make a world of difference. Let's just take a listen and see if we can hear the difference here. The biggest difference is going to be the tail at the end of the sound. So if we go ahead and just put this let's go all the way up to 1,000. You hear the difference? It's very, very clean, very quick and sharp. And if we just work this backwards, maybe to like 300, you start hearing that tail again. And we'll bring it a little closer. We get back into that really, really gritty sound. Now, something a lot of people don't think about is you can continue going down and adding more to that tail, right? Just dirtier, a little bit gross. I mean, just massive, right? I've used it a couple times, but it's not something that I play with all the time unless I'm going up, like turning that time up. But that is a really awesome parameter to work with as well. So we've talked about a couple of things, right? Up to this point, we've talked about changing the amount knob to adjust the dry and wet signal of what OTT is doing to your sound. We've talked about just using the standard OTT preset. We've talked about adjusting the time. We've talked about adjusting the output. We've talked about adjusting the actual compression with the brown bars. And again, hold down Command, click and drag. It's going to affect all three of those. Now let's talk about stacking OTTs. So what I've done is I've just duplicated OTT. So now we have 4 OTTs. Let's see how this sounds. I mean, it is insane. And we definitely lose volume there. It's not something that I would use as is, but if you are going to stack OTTs in your sound design, something that I recommend, just add an EQ at the end, start playing with cutting off some of that low end, or even just actually EQing your sound a little bit. And I know for some people, like sometimes when I'm working with sounds like this, I feel like I don't want to lose the tonality that I have at this point. And that's where EQing comes in, right? Basically carving out the sound. You have a big palette to work with. You're just carving out the little piece that you actually want to use. So that's one way that you can actually use OTT as well, is just by stacking them back to back. You can get some really, really cool sounds. Last but not least, another way that you can use OTT is adding OTT after some effects like reverb or delay when you're in sound design, to give it kind of like a longer tail, or to give it just sort of some sort of different effect. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna add a reverb here onto our bass sound. All right, so I'm just gonna bring it down a little bit. And now what I'm going to do is actually turn on the OTT. So we can get that little extra tail. You may have heard it just then. Let's try it one more time. Pretty cool, right? Let's do it without the OTT. I'm just going to do a quick resampling here. Something you can use this for when you have that extra tail is actually recording the sound and just chopping so that you can just use these guys. Take this, click the, let's go ahead and do a Command J just to get this consolidated down to the one sound. I'm going to hit R key to reverse. Boom, you got a reverse reverb tail. So now I've got the reverb tail added here in front of our sound. We get a little bit of a dynamic effect. So those are a couple different ways that you can use OTT in your production. Just the standard preset, playing with the compression, playing with the amount knob, play with the time, stacking your OTTs, and anywhere in between. There are an unlimited amount of ways that you can actually use this plugin, and these are just a few that I like to use in my daily production. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. I'm wanting to build this up and do a lot more of these tutorials. Try to keep them short and sweet. If you want to find me on social media, I am at Deadman BPM everywhere.